Hi, third grade. This is Mrs. Myers. Happy Monday. I'm so excited today because we're actually going to be starting our first domain in CKLA, and it is on the wind in the willows. And this is a classic British tale that includes four friends, four animal friends, and the adventures they go on. So before we start delving into the read aloud, I'd like to preview our learning expectations over the course of the lessons today, as well as highlight a few key words that you're going to hear. Okay? So today you will determine the main idea and supporting details of a text read aloud. Compare and contrast the two main characters, who are going to be Rat and Mole, from The Wind in the Willows. In the foundational skills with Miss Goodman, you're going to review short vowel sounds and multi-syllable words. And then later, you're going to ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding of a text, referring explicitly to the text as the basis for your answers. This just simply means when you're given a question about your reading, you go back to the text and you find answers to support your thinking. So I'm going to be talking about in this lesson the speaking and listening component. So CKLA is broken into three parts. Okay, the first part is speaking and listening, and this is when you get to relax a little bit, sit back and hear a story read aloud. You also get some exposure to vocabulary words and to some oral comprehension questions that you'll hear me ask at the end. And then there's foundational skills that involves you learning how to read and write words. And then there's the other reading component, which means you will have a text in front of you to read and answer questions to independently. Now, we are going to try as teachers to hold some Zoom meetings, some small group meetings with you this week so that you can practice reading in a small group setting and then answering questions. So, for our read aloud today, this is called The Riverbank. So the first chapter in our Wind in the Willows is called The Riverbank. We have some key vocabulary. There is backwater, bolted, contemplated, hesitating, interferes, and meanders. So backwater, what is backwater? It's a peaceful body of water connected to a river, but with little or almost no current or movement. So it's kind of like a river that's, there's a little part to the side that's peaceful. There's no ripples in the water, no flow of the water. It's just kind of very peaceful, very serene. And you can see in this picture, there's a boat coming down and there's not movement. It can also mean an isolated, unchanging village or town, such as backwaters. And so if I'm going to come back to my screen and think, what could be a sentence that uses the word backwater? And I may look at this picture as for help. I may say, the boat drifted down the backwater. Okay? And as I'm doing this, I may take this word here and underline it so it stands out. The boat drifted down the backwater. Okay? So, and backwater is a noun. It is a thing. So a noun is a person, place, or thing. And so let's move on to the next word. Ooh, this one's bolted. And here, let me move my picture around a little bit. But I've got a picture of a lady who is running. Looks like she's on a track. And then I've got a picture of Sonic the Hedgehog here, and you can see how fast he's moving because he's almost like a blur. But bolted means moved or ran off suddenly. So you can see this lady here must have bolted from the start line, and she's running hard. And then Sonic the Hedgehog's bolting in front of her. And other forms of the word include bolt. So I could have said the lady will bolt once she hears the signal to start, or she bolts toward the finish line, or she is bolting to the finish line. This is a verb. So you can use the word bolt, but it depends on the sentence that you're using and what tense of the word as to how you're going to, what suffix you're going to use at the end. So let me go back and let me think of a good sentence that uses bolt or bolted. I may say Sonic the Hedgehog bolted past the girl to win the race. I like that. Sonic the Hedgehog bolted past the girl to win the race. So I'm going to take bolted. I'm going to underline it because that was the focus word. And there I go. So bolted is a verb. The next word is contemplated. And you can see this girl over here. Looks like she's got some thought bubbles here. Contemplated means considered or thought about or pondered. I want to see your facial expression to show me if you are contemplating or if you've contemplated or you contemplates something. Or you that doesn't make sense. Like she contemplates whether or not she wants to have pizza or a burger for dinner. That's my contemplated face. All right, so I'm going to go back to my sentence here, and I'm going to write, she contemplated what she wanted to be for Halloween. I'm thinking about Halloween. You can tell I've got fall weather on my brain. So I'm going to highlight that word and I'm going to underline it to show that did I spell it right? Yes, I did. That is the focus word for this slide, okay? So contemplated is a verb that means thought about or pondered. Ooh, look over here. This boy looks like he's on a diving board and he's at the edge looking down, and look at his face. What can you tell me about how he's feeling here? It looks like he's unsure. He's not positive that he wants to jump. This next word is called hesitating, and it means in a halting or pausing way, or acting with reluctance or uncertainty. Reluctance means you're not sure, okay? So in other words, this boy might be hesitating to jump off the diving board, all right? Other forms of the words, this is a verb as well, so it depends on how you use it as to the ending or the suffix that word will take. So it could be hesitate. I might hesitate to jump off the diving board. Hesitates, he hesitates to jump. Hesitated, he hesitated a moment before he jumped off the diving board. Okay, so I'm going to go back. I'm hitting my button here. Hopefully I get back on my screen. 1 second. There we go. And I'm going to use this word in a sentence. The boy is hesitating to jump off the diving board. All right, and I'm going to highlight, underline that word because that is the focus word for that sentence. Okay, so the boy is hesitating to jump off the diving board. All right, the next word is interferes. And you can see that my picture right now may interfere with your ability to see the two girls in the background. So I'm going to scoot it away so it does not interfere with the picture. Okay, interferes means gets in the way and prevents something from working smoothly. This poor man over here, bless his heart, he's got a laptop and a phone. It looks like he's getting ready to do some work. And his daughters think it's hilarious to jump on him, pull on his head. They're interfering with his ability to get his work done. Okay, so my picture may interfere. You may have a lot of noise going on in the background at home that might interfere with your ability to focus on getting your work done. So other forms, this is a verb. Other forms of the word could include interfere. Like, please don't let me interfere with your work. Interfered. Like, they definitely interfered with his concentration. Interfering. So she is interfering with me being able to see the picture. So I'm going to go back to my screen. Seems like it takes me just a minute to get back on here. Come on. There we go. All right. I'm going to use interferes in a sentence. So the girls interferes. So the noise interferes with my ability to get my work done. Okay. I may have misspelled interfering. Look right there. See, notice I misspelled a word, so I'm going to fix it. All right. Interferes. Good. All right. Moving on, I've got meandered. And I love this word. You know how we talked about the word collector last week? Some words that you just love to hear. Meandered is one of my, is a cool word to say. And try and use it in a sentence sometime today. Like, I meandered through the room, or I meandered through the house looking for my toys. It means moved slowly and without purpose. Okay, so this lady right here, she's got a backpack on. Looks like she's out in the wilderness. She might meander through the woodlands on a hike. She meanders during the day, or she might be meandering through the woods. So, moved slowly and without purpose. That's what my cats do at home. They meander around, following us from one place to the next. So I may say, the girl meandered through the countryside in her hike. I'm going to highlight that word, underline it, and there we go. Meandered. All right, so I'm going to pause right there for a minute. We just went over some key vocabulary that you may hear in our read aloud. Try and use some of these words throughout the day, and the more you use them, the better you'll remember what they mean. Okay, so today in our read aloud, The Wind in the Willows, you're going to be hearing about a special type of tree. Okay, and this is the tree that is featured in the story. It's called a willow tree. And there are many types of willows, and these particular ones are called weeping willows. And willows like a lot of water, and therefore tend to grow near sources of water such as rivers, lakes, and ponds. So you can see I think it's called weeping willow because it kind of falls. You can see some of the branches kind of sag a little bit like they're sad, like they're weeping. And you can see that this one in particular is growing near a water source. And there will definitely be a water source in our story. Okay, let me move my photo around here. Here is a map. You may wonder, what in the world does a map have to do with this story? Well, you have to know where this story comes from. It was written by a man named Kenneth Grahame, who was born in Scotland, right here, but later moved to England when he was very young. So this whole section is called the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom is made up of 4 countries: Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And citizens of the United Kingdom are called British because the main landmass of the UK is called Great Britain. Okay, so our author Kenneth Grahame was born in Scotland and later moved down to England. And you might hear me talk like this throughout the read aloud because there's going to be some words, some characters talking that are from Britain or from England, okay? Now, also, the setting of the story is heavily influenced by the author Kenneth Grahame's childhood, okay? The English countryside where Kenneth Grahame grew up near a river called the Thames River, all right? So it's located right here on the map. So generally, a lot of times when authors write a story, they use their own background knowledge to help them create characters, create settings, create the plot. So if I look right here in the side, this shows a little girl sitting on the bank of a river. So our main setting in this story is going to be on the bank, the river bank of the Thames River. So you can see she's sitting right here on the edge. Now, kind of going back to what I said about British. Depending on where you live in the world, it can affect how you use vocabulary. Okay, for example, take a look at this picture over here in the corner. What would you say if somebody said, what is that a picture of? Could you say, oh, that's a Coca-Cola can? All right, that's one. What about if I said that's a Coke can? Two. That's a soda can. That's three. Soft drink can. And if you're in other parts of the country, you might say pop. It's a pop can. Depending on where you live, can affect what word you would use to describe this picture. And this is called dialect. Dialect describes differences in words and phrases used to describe objects based on where you live, as well as how those words are pronounced. This was pretty interesting. I lived in New Hampshire for a few years. And when I first moved up there and I taught in the school, I would have a student raise their hand and say, Mrs. Myers, may I please go to the bubbler? I had no clue what that child was talking about. What was a bubbler? Well, I later found out a bubbler was another word for water fountain. They didn't say water fountain. They said bubbler. And so that one object, a water fountain, had different vocabulary words, or people said it differently, depending on where you live. Now, in Great Britain, they have some words and expressions that they use that we may not have ever heard before. And so we're going to be hearing some of those in today's Read Aloud as well. So even though people may speak the same language, there may be some differences in the words that they use. The Wind in the Willows uses some different vocabulary than we use in America. And we just finished talking about how you would describe this picture. Okay, now let me introduce you to the characters. Let me move my head because I'm definitely not a character in the book. But this book was published in the year 1908, so it's more than 100 years old. It's considered to be a classic, or even one of the best children's stories ever written. And the main characters include a mole, a water rat, a badger, and a toad. And there may be a few other characters that are introduced, but these are the four main friends that we're going to be hearing about. Okay, and these are real pictures of them, but throughout our story, you're going to see some fictional pictures. So fictional means made up or fake, but these are non-fiction photos. So you can kind of get your mind ready for the animals that you're going to hear about. Now, also, speaking of that, personification. Now, I know when I taught first grade, if you were here at DCA, we talked a lot about personification in our fables unit. And personification means when you give an animal or thing characteristics of a person, such as talking, wearing clothes, etc. So I can look at this picture right now and tell you there's no way that these characters in real life could wear clothes. You're not going to dress up a mole. You're not going to dress up a water rat or a toad or a badger. Okay, or even this otter right here. You're not going to dress them up. And you probably won't see them having a picnic with tablecloth and a picnic basket and little plates. You might see them eating something in the woods, but not a full-blown picnic like this. And you probably won't see them kind of all together like they're best friends. And I can see one more thing here. Have you ever seen a toad rowing a boat? That can't happen. That's called personification. I'm giving the toad the ability to do something that a person can do. All right. So I have a little video that we're going to watch on personification. So bear with me. Let me see if I can get this up and running.
Get ready, because K-8 Science is here. Generation.
All right, we're going to skip that.
Personification, making something come alive with the words that you provide in situations. Personification, take something that you're saying and it acts just like a person. The flowers danced in the wind, but they don't dance even if they had the chance. But they move together like a dancer with a partner. It's a nice way of saying what the flowers were doing today. Personification, making something come alive with the words that you provide in situations. Personification, take something that you're saying and it acts just like a person. The city I live in never sleeps, but who would have said that the city goes to bed? And I think you'll agree how big that would be. And it's a way to write down that there's always some people around.
Time flies and waits for no one.
There was a breeze, the clock screams in my ear. The time to wake up is here. The sun smiled down at me. Good day it's gonna be. This gray sweater is my friend. I guess I look good again. Personification, making something come alive with the words that you provide in situations. Personification, take something that you're saying and it acts just like a person. Take something that you're saying and it acts just like a person.
Awesome. All right, guys, let me go back to our PowerPoint. So we talked about some examples from this picture in particular about personification. And you can, I'm going to include the link to this video in our lesson. So in case you want to look back at it and jam again like I did, you are more than welcome to. Okay, so let us go ahead and kick off today's read aloud to listen for examples of personification. Okay, and as we're reading, I want you to be thinking about our characters, Water Rat and Mole, and trying to figure out ways that they may be alike and ways that they may be different, because when we are finished, you're going to have an activity to do. Okay, so in this picture, let's start us off. The mole had been working very hard all the morning, spring cleaning his little home, first with his brooms, then with his dusters, then on ladders and steps and chairs, with a brush and a pail of whitewash. He did this until he had dust in his throat and eyes, and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur. Spring was moving in the air above and the earth below, and around him in his dark and lowly little house. Any wonder he suddenly flung down his brush on the floor and said, "Bother!" and "Oh, blow!" and also, "Hang spring cleaning!" and bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. So I remember bother, oh, blow, and hang are some examples of British sayings that show someone doesn't like something. So looking at this picture, I really don't think Mole is enjoying cleaning his house and painting. Whitewashing means he's painting the ceiling right up there, a coat of white. He seems to want to get out and enjoy the nice day instead of staying inside and cleaning. Mole immediately made for the steep little tunnel, and without a moment's hesitation, he began scraping and scratching and scrabbling. He worked busily with his little paws and muttered to himself, up we go, till at last, pop, His snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. So I mentioned bother, oh, blow, and hang are examples of British sayings that show someone doesn't like something. What might be some American sayings that show the same? Doggone it. That might be one. All right. This is fine, he said to himself. This is better than whitewashing, he added as he jumped with delight at the joy of spring. In his state of happiness, he made his way across the meadow till he reached the hedge on the farther side. It all seemed too good to be true, as moving hither and thither, he observed everywhere birds building and leaves and flowers bursting forth. He thought his happiness was complete when, as he meandered aimlessly along, he came to the edge of a full-fed river. There he stood quite mesmerized, as never before had he seen a river. He watched in awe as it shimmered and shined, gurgled and burbled, swirled and curled its way seaward. So bewitched and fascinated was he, that he trotted for a while by the side of it. Eventually, exhausted by this tremendous effort, he sat down on the bank to rest. As he sat on the grass and gazed across the river, a dark hole in the bank opposite, just above the water's edge, caught his eye. Mole quietly contemplated what a nice snug dwelling place it would make. As he gazed, something bright and small seemed to twinkle like a tiny star down in the heart of it. But it could hardly be a star, and it was too glittering and small for a glowworm. Then as he looked, it winked at him, and so revealed itself to be an eye, and a small face began gradually to grow up around it, like a frame round a picture. A brown little face with whiskers, a grave round face with the same twinkle in its eye, small neat ears, and thick silky hair. It was the water rat! The two animals stood and regarded each other cautiously. "Hello, Mole," said the rat. "Hello, Rat," said the Mole. "Would you like to come over?" inquired the rat. "Oh, it's all very well to ask," said the Mole, rather grumpily, he being new to a river and riverside life and its ways. So when he mentioned a glowworm is a wingless beetle that creates and gives off a bright light. So when he first saw this hole, this opening, he's like, "Ooh, what is that?" He saw a little twinkle that he thought might have been a glowworm, but it was really the water rat in his eye. The rat said nothing, but stooped and unfastened a rope and hauled on it, then lightly stepped into a little boat. So he must have been across the water. So remember he was looking over across the water and he saw something? And it was the rat. Then lightly stepped into a little boat which the Mole had not observed. It was painted blue outside and white within, and was just the size for two animals, and the Mole loved it immediately. The rat sculled across. Then he held up his forepaw as the Mole stepped gingerly down. So he's kind of holding up his arm to let the Mole step into the boat. "Lean on that," he said. "Now then, step lively." And the Mole, to his great delight, found himself actually seated in the stern of a real boat. So, when it said that rat sculled across, if I look at this picture and I didn't know what sculled means, I could see that he's moving the oars like he's paddling. So another word for sculled might mean like he's paddling across. "This has been a wonderful day," he said as the rat shoved off and took to the sculls again. "Do you know, I've never been in a boat before in all my life." "What?" cried the rat, open-mouthed. "Never been in a... You never... Well, What have you been doing then?" "It is so nice as all that. Is it so nice as all that?" asked the Mole shyly, that he was quite prepared to believe it as he leant back in his seat and surveyed the cushions, the oars, and all the fascinating fittings. "Nice? It's the only thing," said the water rat solemnly as he leaned forward for his stroke. Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. Simply messing, he went on dreamily. Messing about in boats, messing. Look ahead, rat! Cried the mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat struck the bank full tilt. The oarsman lay on his back at the bottom of the boat, his heels in the air. So what do you think an oarsman is? They hit the bank. The oarsman is the one that is controlling the oars, the paddles here. So when he hit it, it knocked him flat on his back. About in boats or with boats, the rat went on cheerily, picking himself up with a pleasant laugh. In or out of 'em, it doesn't matter. Look here, if you've really nothing else to do, what do you say we spend time on the river together? So we talked about what we think scold means, and scold means like to paddled, and oarsman is the one who's controlling the boat. So here we go. The mole waggled his toes from sheer happiness, spread his chest with a sigh of contentment, and leaned back blissfully into the soft cushions. What a day I'm having, he said. Let us start at once. So I think Mole's pretty happy about this trip on the boat with Rat. Hold on a minute then, said the rat as he tied fast the boat and climbed up into his hole above. Moments later, he reappeared, staggering under a fat wicker luncheon basket. Shove that under your feet, he said to the mole as he passed it down into the boat. Then he untied the boat and took the sculls again. What's inside it? Asked the mole eagerly. There's cold chicken inside it, replied the rat. Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled gherkins, salad, French rolls, crescent sandwiches, potted meat, ginger beer, lemonade, soda water. Oh, stop, cried the mole. This is too much. Do you really think so? Inquired the rat seriously. It's only what I always take on these little excursions. The other animals complain that I hardly have enough. The mole did not hear a word he said. He was already absorbed in the new life he was entering upon. He trailed a paw in the water and dreamed long, waking dreams. The water rat, like the good little fellow he was, sculled steadily on and did not disturb him. I like your clothes, old chap, the rat remarked after some half an hour or so had passed. So old chap is a British saying for man or boy. So let me read that again. I like your clothes, old chap, the rat remarked after some half an hour or so had passed. I'm going to get a velvet jacket myself some day. So he's given a compliment, probably filling Mole's bucket by complimenting him. I beg your pardon, said the mole, pulling himself together with an effort. You must think me very rude, but all this is so new to me. So, this is a river. The river, corrected the rat. And you really live by the river? What a jolly life! By it, and with it, and on it, and in it, said the rat. It's brother and sister to me, and aunts and company, and food and drink, and naturally washing. It's my world, and I don't want any other. But isn't it a bit dull at times? The mole asked. Just you and the river and no one else to pass a word with? No one else to? Well, I mustn't be hard on you, said the rat. You're new to it. The bank is so crowded nowadays that many people are moving away altogether. Oh no, it isn't what it used to be at all. Otters, kingfishers, dabchicks, moorhens, all of them about all day long and always wanting you to do something, as if a fellow had no business of his own to attend to. So, to kind of recap a little bit, it seems like this experience for Mole is like life-changing. He's only really been underground and kept to himself, and finally he just says, I've had enough of it. And he's discovering a whole new world above him. And he's enjoying this time with Rat. He's at peace, he's relaxed, and he starts to think, oh, this life must be a little bit dull or boring for the water rat. But the water rat He says the river banks are actually getting crowded because there's so many animals that want to do something with them. Here is, old chap is a British saying for man or boy. And here were some of the other animals that were mentioned, like kingfisher, dabchicks, moorhens. Okay, those were a few others that were mentioned that might be along the riverbank. And those are real photos of them. Kingfisher, moorhens, and dabchicks. Okay, what lies over there? Asked the mole, waving a paw towards a background of woodland that darkly framed the water meadows on one side of the river. Well, replied the hat hesitantly, that's the wild wood. We don't go there too often. Are there scary creatures there? Mole asked, trying not to tremble. The squirrels are all right, Rat replied, and the rabbits, some of them, but rabbits are a mixed lot. And then there's Badger, of course. He lives right in the heart of it. Wouldn't live anywhere else, either, dear old Badger. Nobody interferes with him. Remember that word, interferes? Nobody messes with him or gets in his way. Why, who should interfere with him? Asked the mole. Well, of course, there are others, explained the rat in a hesitating sort of way. Weasels, stoats, foxes, and so on. They're all right in a way. I'm very good friends with them. Past the time of day when we meet, but you can't trust them, and that's a fact. And beyond the wild wood? Mole asked. Beyond the wild wood is the wide world, said the rat, and that's something that doesn't matter, either to you or me. I've never been there, and I'm never going, nor you either, if you've got any sense. Don't ever refer to it again, please. Now then, here's our backwater at last, where we're going to lunch. So that backwater, that calm place where he can just kind of let go of the oars and have some peace. They're going to have their lunch back there. So over here where Mole's pointing is the wild wood. And within that wild wood, do you remember who Water Rat said lived there? He said the badger lives there, along with some other animals that don't interfere with the badger. Okay, you don't interfere with him. And he says that some of those animals cannot be trusted. So that's the end of our read aloud today. Looking at a few of the animals that he mentioned, the weasel, the fox, and the stoat. The stoat kind of looks like a ferret, doesn't it? And here are some questions for us to consider as we finished our read aloud. Get it to work. What British English words or phrases did you hear in today's read aloud? So what were some of the things that you heard that were different sayings than you've heard in the past? Like old chap might be one, or old blow as a term of frustrations. Why is there British English in this story? Why do they have some words that are different? Do you remember me talking that the author is British? And so he uses a lot of his own personal experiences and his life in his story. Who are the main characters in today's read aloud? There's two main characters. There is the mole and the water rat. And what do we call the events of a story in which the characters are involved? So do you remember the events back in, I think, second grade and first grade? You talked about the plot. The plot is the events of a story. And what things do you know about Mole based on what you heard in the read aloud today? So, I remember that Mole, this is a brand new experience for Mole, so he might be inexperienced. He is very lively, like he's excitable, and he's taking it all in. Would you describe Mole as curious? And why or why not? This is an opinionated question. So as long as you can tell me why and support your answer, we're good. So think about how you would describe him. Would you describe him as curious? What season is the story set in when Mole leaves his home? Do you remember what kind of cleaning he was doing? Spring cleaning. And I remember that he was excited to get out of his little hole and see the world because things were going on around him. So it's spring. What adjectives would you use to describe Rat? Now, Rat seems to be pretty easygoing. He fell down, remember when he hit the bank and he fell on his back and he just laughed and carried on? He's pretty easygoing. He also seems friendly. That would be a good adjective, friendly, because even though he doesn't know Mole, he invites him on the boat with him to spend the day and even shares his picnic. So maybe he's giving. That would be a good adjective. What other adjectives would you use to describe Rat? In what kind of setting does the story begin? So where is Mole when we first are introduced to the read aloud? To what kind of setting are we introduced after Mole bolts out of his burrow? So it starts out in his little burrow, and then he comes out into the world. So he's by the riverbank. Why do you think Rat does not want to go into or even speak about the wide world or the area but beyond the wild wood? So why is he hesitant? Remember that word? Hesitant to talk about it. Why might you think he is hesitant? Now, we also talked a little bit about personification and thinking about examples of personification in our read aloud. So I know that, we saw pictures of both animals dressed up in clothes, and they were talking to each other using they had British accents. And I know that rats and moles do not really talk to each other like that. And I know that a rat can't really row a boat, and they don't have picnics together. What are some other examples of personification that you saw? What are some characteristics of mole and water rat that are not examples of personification? So in the real world, could they both be found by a riverbank? Probably. Would a mole really live in a burrow? Yeah. Would a water rat and mole be scared to go a certain place? Yeah. So what are some other examples that you noticed in the read aloud today? Now, one last piece before we get into our independent practice, and this is probably one of the longest lessons you're going to have this week for our read aloud because we're introducing ourselves to the story and kind of giving some background information. But one of the words that we mentioned, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, is meandered. Can you guys say meandered? I can't hear you. Say it one more time. Meandered. Meandered means, the mole thought his happiness was complete. When he meandered aimlessly along, he came to the edge of a full-fed river. So this was the sentence in the book that used meandered. And meandered means moved slowly without a purpose. What are some words that have a similar meaning? So moved slowly, like sauntered. I think about somebody who sauntered, they're moving slowly. Here are some other words like walked, wandered, like the mole wandered aimlessly along. The mole walked aimlessly along. The mole ambled. That might be a new word for you. The mole strolled aimlessly along. The mole roamed aimlessly along. So all these words could be ones that you replace meandered with in the sentence to make sense. So synonyms mean words that have a similar meaning. And I think S in synonyms, S in similar, to mean about the same thing. Now, what are some antonyms or words that have an opposite meaning to meandered? Well, opposite of walking might be running or hustled or marched or hurried. So we know that the mole is not in a hurry. He's not hustling about. He's just kind of taking it all in. He's taking his time. He is meandering along. All right. Let me go back one little thing. So meandered is a verb. So it's an action word. And you can see in this picture, this family might be meandering along, enjoying the time together. Now, the last part of our lesson involves a little bit of independent practice from you. Now, you will get a copy of the Wind in the Willows activity. It's comparing, contrasting rat and mole. So, compare and contrast means that you're finding ways that they are alike, that they're similar, and ways that they are different. So, when you get this activity, you are going to probably go into Google Slides, kind of like we did for the escape room activity. And you're going to go in here, hit File, make a copy, entire presentation, and you're going to write your name on it. So I might put Mrs. Myers, and OK. Now open it up with your name at the top. And within this text, you can write down and type in some differences between water rat and mole. So if I may think about one way, let me start with the way that they're the same. That might be easier. So what are some ways that both water rat and mole are the same? So you might say they both live near the riverbank. Okay? That might be one way that they're the same. They're both animals. They might both be wearing clothes. What's the difference though? So when we go over here to differences, well, one difference might be that the water rat lives above the ground, and he's used to life above the ground. And if I put I put the water. Let me go back. The water rat lives above the ground. Then how does that relate to the mole? So if the rat lives above, then the mole lives below ground in a burrow. So generally when I have a difference, I say one thing that's different from that's different about the rat compared to the mole. I might say while the water rat lives above the ground, the mole lives below in a burrow. So that's one way that they're different. Even though they both live near the riverbank, one lives above the ground, one lives below the ground. So I hope this helps you get started. I'd like you to find at least maybe 2 or 3 reasons or 2 or 3 ways that both are similar and 2 or 3 ways that both are different. And just kind of listen back. If you want to go back to the read aloud a little bit, you can listen to it again or use what you remember in your brain to help you with this activity. If for some reason you accidentally delete the text boxes, you can click the undo button, or you can click insert text box and it will pop up a new text box on your screen for you to type in. Okay? I hope this helps. Please let us know if you have any questions whatsoever, and I cannot wait to read chapter 2 with you tomorrow. Bye.